Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Iamheretotalk, myself Raj, and yes, I'm back after a long time with the new episode of Health Talks. Health Talks episode number 8 with Zane Griggs. Yes, Zane Griggs, he is our guest, and Zen and me, we have been following each other on Instagram not for a very long time, but I do believe we share same kind of thought process. So I figured out to make a Health Talks with him on the topic animal protein versus plant protein. Which one is better for the overall optimization of health? And I believe Zen is the right person with whom I can actually talk on this topic, and we can actually create a really good content for the overall people to educate them or to create some good informative content on this, right? So he is from Nashville, and thanks to technology that we can actually connect with each other, doesn't matter how far we are. And Zen, I would like to thank you for accepting this invitation, and I believe that this entire conversation will come out really great on this topic, because I believe that you are the right person with whom I can actually have this discussion about the factors when it comes to figure out which protein is actually healthy for the overall or health. So without wasting much time, I'd like to start today's conversation with Zane Griggs. Hello, Zen. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation or the Zoom call.
Well, thank you, Raj. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Believe that this conversation will be great, and this conversation will entirely create a great information for the overall people. Those people will be our audience and share this video. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's get directly to the point. First thing I would like to ask when I'd like to discuss that, number one, animal protein or plant protein, which is better and why? What do you think from your perspective?
Personally, I would say animal protein is more it's more bioavailable. So it's just so in other words, we're going to utilize more of animal protein across the board. Whether you're talking about from a supplement or from whole food, there's actually what's called a protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. So they score protein based on exactly, right. And you know what it is. So they rate the protein itself on our ability to consume and digest it and utilize it. And of course, with things like eggs and whey protein, milk protein being at the top, at being at a 1, or 100, if you will. And then maybe beef and soy are both high. They're in the 90s. But then as you get into like beans, peas, peanuts, stuff like that, it gets down in the 50s and 60s as far as our digestibility compared to eggs and whey. So you might be taking in the same amount of protein, but you're not going to assimilate maybe 50 or 60% of that
because of the bioavailability.
Because many times it's bound in fiber. There's starches, but then they have to get through the starch. You have to separate, your digestive system has to separate the protein from that fiber and that resilient starch in order to make use of it. So if you can't make use of it, it's just going to pass through your system with the fiber. Right. You've got to be able to break it down and absorb it. And so a lot of things like lentils are a great source of protein for a plant, except that it's only about 50% bioavailable compared to an egg or whey or something like that. So, black beans, another one, but they're still 50, 60% bioavailability. So we can't measure the protein from a plant exactly the same, like gram for gram, as animal based. Right. Because we can't absorb it. Whereas animal protein is pretty much, it's just protein. There's usually no carbohydrate at all to break it away from. There's some fat, which actually helps with the digestion, but it's primarily all protein. It breaks it down in our small intestine, the acid-based part of our small intestine, without much problem at all. And we can take as long as we want to digest that and absorb it. So it's far more bioavailable just from that perspective alone.
So the matter comes over here, the bioavailability, because it's not like that the lentils on the other source of protein, they have protein, The matter of fact, they are actually, bonded with carbohydrates as well and the fibers as well. So the
Right.
moment we are actually consuming them, it's not like that we are getting the 100% efficacy or efficiently our body is actually absorbing the protein from those
Right.
sources because of the other components, other ingredients they have. So automatically it's very much getting clarified over here. That's if between animal protein or plant protein, which is better, as you said, as you cleared it, because of the other ingredients, because of the bioabsorption rate. We actually
Mhm.
should focus on more animal protein rather than focusing on plant protein. Is it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Whether in supplementation, I mean, in whole food forms, I think that's
Mm.
most true. If you're talking about a powder supplement, then you get into a
Mhm.
different argument
Mhm.
because they've both been broken into a powder, which
Mm.
are easily digested. There's less fiber, but from whole food,
Mhm.
that's the big impediment is the fiber
Mm.
it's bound to.
So
So,
Zen, I would like to ask you a little bit of different question over here. That what do you think about
okay.
the plant-based protein supplements? Means as now, I get to see a lot of advertisement like the pea protein, brown rice
Mhm.
protein, and there are a lot of other such stuffs. So what's your take about these things?
Well, it depends on what they've done to it to some degree.
Mm.
Um, many So another issue with plant-based protein is it doesn't have as many or as large a quantity as of branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids,
Great.
right?
Yeah.
Which animal protein has more of it and has a full supply of it.
Mhm.
Um, and if your goal is to use that protein to build
Mm.
muscle or to
Mm.
or to repair muscle,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
protein synthesis, you've got to have those branched chain amino acids, especially leucine being the number one
Right.
amino acid
Right.
for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So many of them. So if you have many plant-based proteins, like let's say per 25 gram serving of protein,
Mhm.
well, in whey, you're going to have 2.5 to maybe 3 grams of leucine in that
Mhm.
24 grams. Whereas in a plant-based protein, you might have 1.5. So
Right.
you might have maybe a 2/3 to half of the amount of leucine. And that may not sound like a lot if you don't realize that leucine, though, is the primary driver of muscle
It's very
protein
much been
synthesis.
potent for the overall muscle protein synthesis, right?
Right. You need
Yeah.
at least 2 to 3
Yeah.
grams per dose.
Right.
So
Right.
basically, you would have to take in about 40 grams of a plant protein supplement to get the equivalent leucine as you would taking in 24 grams
Right.
of a whey
Whey protein.
or
Right.
a casein or something like
Casein.
that.
Right.
So you have to eat a lot more of it to get the same effect.
Same value, same
And
effect. Right.
then, and some of them will even try to, they'll try to add branched chain amino acids to the
Mhm.
pea, like a pea protein. They'll try to
Mhm.
match by adding extra, but
Adding
actually,
extra, amino acids,
branched
extra.
chain amino acids are
Right.
adding
Right.
more
Right. Yeah.
leucine. But there's actually been a study I saw read about just a couple of weeks ago, where they'll look at the amount of time that the aminos stay in the blood over a 4-hour period after taking in the various types of supplements. So you compared
Mhm.
whey
Mhm.
to like a pea protein and a pumpkin based protein that had the amino acids
But they are
or the
actually,
branched chain amino acids
artificially binded. Means if you're
binded. Yeah,
talking
they
about the
matched
plant
them.
protein supplements, right? To match the
Yeah,
values of the whey protein and also the casein protein.
they
They are
matched
doing it.
them.
Right.
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 And the whey protein stayed in the amino acids were present in the bloodstream for a
Mhm.
longer period of time. Like I think the plant proteins the amount of time in the bloodstream was reduced by 30 to 40%.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
30-40% reduction time in the aminos being available in the blood, which would tell me that they're just, again, not as bioavailable.
Bioavailable. Mhm.
Yeah, not as digestible. They're not going to be, they tend to get, or they might get either that or they're getting metabolized.
Right. So,
In other words, they're
my
being
second
burned by the
point,
liver.
yeah, the second point it was means like does plant protein have the complete amino acid profile? And just gave the statement over here. Hmm.
Yeah. Well,
It's
that's the thing
hmm.
is, so what people don't realize is that the branched chain amino acids are the only ones that our muscles can use for those essential amino acids. There's just a handful of them
Right,
that our
right,
muscles
right,
can
right,
use. for growth. All the other amino acids that are present, certainly there's a lot of amino acids in plant-based protein, but those are used by the liver to create energy. They can be metabolized by the liver, but unless they're the essential amino acids, they can't be used by the muscle for muscle protein synthesis. So you've got to
Especially
have
over here,
those.
as you said, the leucine is very much important for the overall activation of the muscle protein synthesis, and also so the factor over here it comes the mTOR pathway, the mammalian targetopyromycin P70S6K pathway activation that is actually that happens because of the amino acid, particularly leucine, and we get it through whey protein and the casein protein and any other kind of animal-based protein sources, which we don't get from the plant-based protein. As you said, if that the matter becomes different if the plant-based protein is getting binded by other amino acids profile. If they are actually binding artificially, then it becomes different. But at the end, it's all about the bioavailability. At the end, it's all about the how our body is absorbing the protein, right?
Exactly. So I mean, it just doesn't compare. I mean, you have to do a lot more to the plant protein to get it or have more of it to catch up to the animal. So if it's a matter of quality, there really isn't. I mean, it takes a lot less effort to make the animal protein work well for you.
Right. So it's a matter of choice that whether you want to take on scopes continuously just to match the value of the whey protein or casein, or you just want to have that. And the same thing actually happens for the the normal whole food sources of plant-based, like the lentils and other things, as you said. It's very much right now. I can actually get a clear concept that it's very much clear over here. It's a matter of choice that whether you want to have the plant and animal, you can have. But if you really see the overall value, and if you really want to evaluate the value between the plant protein and animal protein, how our body is absorbing, then the matter comes of quantity. You can take an animal protein, you can take a plant protein. The plant protein you have to take in a lot more quantity comparatively from the animal protein just to match up the values between that. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, so next, for optimum performance and sustainability, is vegetarian or vegan diet is feasible in the long run? What do you think?
In my opinion, well, for personal health, again, it takes a great deal of effort. It's a lot more effort. So I think there might be a few people who genetically and through a great deal of effort could possibly make it work, but on a large scale, I would say the majority of people who try a vegetarian or vegan diet are going to be nutritionally deficient over a long term.
Okay.
Or have problems with basically metabolic disease. I have to take in too much energy food in order to get the protein that they need. Because if we're not getting enough protein, we start chasing it in other foods. So if you think about a piece of meat, let's just say, or some kind of, let's say, a chicken or something like that, or fish, if you get 30 grams of protein there from that fish, you have no carbohydrates and maybe 6-8 grams of fat. But if you look at, say, or eggs, same way, 30 grams of protein, maybe you have more fat. Maybe you have 20, 25 grams of fat, no carb, whatsoever. But if you're looking at, say, beans, for instance, you have, in addition to that, you have a lot more carbohydrate than you do protein. So yes, there's protein in those beans, but you have to take on a whole lot more energy and calories to get the same amount of protein. So if you're looking for a leaner body, or you want to keep blood sugar low, you're going to be consuming a lot more carbohydrates and energy than you are protein in your protein meal, in your protein food. And then you add in any other food you have with that's not necessarily your protein source, your carbohydrate or intake is going to be much higher. Right. So it could be 3 or 4 times the amount of protein you're taking in. And that's not a good position to be in if you're trying to control blood sugar or weight. for instance.
It's very much relative, in it very much matter of, it varies from person to person. And also it's a fact that the people, suppose I'm a person who's having diabetes or kind of pre-diabetic state. For me, if I think like vegetarian source, if I try to consume protein from that, it's not for me healthy at all, right? For a
Right.
person who is actually having other kind of pathophysiological situations like hypertension or any kind of, because of the high insulin levels in the blood. So it's a very much important to understand, to evaluate the value and the factors over here, that because of the high carbohydrate content, as you said, it's very much important to understand that if I'm completely trying to focus on the protein, then actually we should focus on protein rather than carbohydrates. Because from vegetarian sources, we do get protein, but as well we get carbohydrates from that, and that is also in a huge amount. So it's very much scientific, and it's very much important to understand in a scientific way to stay healthy.
Right.
So
Right.
so the last thing is protein negotiable? What do you think? Because in India, especially if I talk about over here, my country, means like people is so much into a high carbohydrate meal, mix like 70 to 80% of carbohydrate and a little bit amount of protein and a little bit amount of fats. Because still now people do believe that fats, saturated fats and butter, ghee, cheese, these things are actually unhealthy, and protein, we do not need that. Protein is actually affecting our overall kidney, and it increases the BUN levels. And carbohydrates, we need it for the overall energy system. So what do you think, Zen? What's your take in this?
I have so much to say about that. You may not have time for it.
No, I have time. You just say.
I can't even begin. Well, okay, so let's just start with what our bodies do every single day. Depending on your activity level, it may be more, but generally speaking, every adult has a protein turnover on a daily basis of about 250 grams of protein. Every day, we recycle that much protein. We break it down, we rebuild it. Some of those amino acids are damaged. They're oxidized. They're old. We've had them for a while, right? If you exercise and you're breaking down muscle tissue that way, or if you're doing physical labor, you're going to have more damaged protein. You're going to use more protein, right? You're going to have the muscle, or you're going to have a greater need to replace that protein. So if you look at 250 grams a day minimum per person that's recycling, you're going to need to replace that at some point, or you're going to start wasting muscle and wasting other tissue. Your body is going to say, okay, we're not getting enough through our diet to replace these. So we have to break down. Our only storage from a protein in our body is muscle. Right. And so you're going to, over time, especially as we get older, much harder to hang on to muscle. It's much more difficult to digest protein as we get older as well. We lose the ability to, we actually have greater protein needs as we get older. So because we don't digest as well, and because we're having sarcopenia, we're breaking down muscle tissue, it's just hormonal, right? We have greater needs for protein to replace that protein. It is not a minimal, it's not a minimal need. I mean, there are studies showing like the recommended daily allowance in the US is about 0.36 grams per pound of body weight. So that'd be like approximately 8 grams per kilo, give or take. Okay. There's studies showing a increased frequency of hip fractures with people who take in this exact amount of protein, this in that ballpark of protein, because their bones are being, or they're not getting the protein and the phosphorus and all that they need to maintain their bone density. So you got bone density, you got muscle, it's going to get wasted, and your blood sugar. Okay, so if you're taking in mostly carbohydrate, that's a lot of energy, obviously, right? If you're taking in a great deal of carbohydrate, you're not going to burn fat. So the more carbs you eat, the less you're going to have to burn stored fat. You will continue to store it. What you don't burn, your body can only hold about 400 grams of glycogen, right, of glucose, carbohydrate in its body at one time. 100 in the liver, maybe 300 in the muscles, give or take. Anything beyond that, it's going to be stored as fat, or you're going to try to burn it in the moment, which is not likely. You're going to burn much of it in the first hour so that you eat it, unless you're absolutely moving while you're eating it. So you're going to reduce fat burning. So you're not going to be able to. So if you're eating mostly carbohydrate, 70% carbohydrate, there's not much chance you're going to burn much fat unless you're sleeping. That's the only time, and so it's a very, you're limiting the amount of fat you can actually access because you're constantly taking in carbohydrate. The thing is, our liver can provide all the glucose we need to control our blood sugar and for energy without us eating any carbohydrates whatsoever.
That's basically the gluconeogenesis you were talking about.
Gluconeogenesis. So we can break down protein to turn into glucose in a dose that is required for the moment. In other words, the liver can regulate how much glucose comes into our blood and how much glucose we need based on our needs. If you're working out, it'll put out more glucose. If you're working at your desk or you're working on the phone, you're not going to need as much glucose. So your blood sugar can stay stable. But if you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar is going up. If you eat protein, it's a very minimal impact on blood sugar, comes back to normal very quickly. And if your body needs glucose, your liver can break down the protein,
liver knows
in muscle or what you
regulate. Yes,
right. It knows how much to regulate, how much you need, as opposed to a big dose that has your blood sugar elevated for 2 or 3 hours and then comes crashing down and makes you hungry again. So you're hungry every 3 or 4 hours, trying to pick your blood sugar back up. So you have these very unstable blood sugar levels, leading to more hunger. So you're always hungry. Right. Whereas I know when I eat a great deal of protein, I can go 2 meals a day. No problem. I'm not hungry. It allows me to burn fat more effectively and allows my blood sugar to stay stable. And I'm not hungry. I don't feel like I need a snack.
Zen, I believe that you will be, you will agree with me in this point. There are a lot of factors it's happening because of this, because of misinformation on internet, and a lot of other nutrition specialists also say that you need 6 meals in a day if you want to lose fat. There are a lot of things that we do get to see. Right.
Yes, I've heard those a lot. I've been doing this for 23 years, and that was the story. That was what we were, we told each other, we told our clients. This came out of the bodybuilder world. If you're training 15, 20 hours a week, like an athlete, like a college athlete or a club athlete, then you might be able to, I don't know when you have time, but you might be able to justify eating often, several times a day. But if you're just your average person who has a job, who works 40 plus hours a week, you're not working out 10, 15, 20 hours a week. There's no reason to take in that much food. You're just, you're basically playing with your blood sugar. You're setting yourself up.
They compromise, means people, those who are actually having this kind of meal composition, like 6 meals in a day, I do believe they are actually compromising with the what should I say, means like the satiety level, because they do not get that satiety from any single meals. I believe that, and that is why they always try to have like after 2 to 3 hours of interval, they do try to have meals, because somehow they are not reaching the satiety level. Somehow the overall hunger level is not getting fulfilled. The overall, what should I say? So the nutrition or the nutrient requirements are not getting fulfilled because of the wrong meal composition, and also selection, because of the always having a sense of higher carbohydrate meal, or going more higher in the carbohydrate than protein, over the protein. It happens because of these factors, and believe. And as you said, it's very much interesting. People, those who are in a normal lifestyle or doing desk job, for that person or for those people, it's not necessary to have 6 meals or 5 meals. And if somebody who is athlete or doing workout on a regular basis, or any highly busy in all these kind of athletic activities, for that person might be it's his choice. That is also depends at whether how much muscle mass they have or how much energy requirement it's there. There are a lot of factors. It's very much it's not like a thumb rule that you have to eat 6 meals or 5 meals a day to stay healthy.
Yeah.
So it's not scientifically proven, or it's not scientifically right at all, is it?
No. I mean, there's plenty of studies comparing 1 or 2 meals to 6 meals, and there's no change in metabolic rate. There's no improvement. If anything, I think it just makes people fatter. because like you said, they're not satisfied. They keep eating. They're constantly elevating insulin. They're stimulating their hunger hormones.
Right.
And they're never going to burn fat because their blood sugar never comes down. So basically they're eating for 12 hours or more a day. And they're never allowing their body to get in a position hormonally to access stored fat. It just doesn't make sense. They're just creating more. They're creating more hunger, and they're creating fewer opportunities to actually burn their own body fat.
Right.
So
there's
also the
clear
nutrient density that's in meat. You know, the nutrient density in meat. If you think about all of the fat soluble minerals and vitamins in animal food, like A, D, E, K to some degree, all the B vitamins, you can't get B vitamins from plant sources. You have to supplement. Vitamin A is a retinol form in an animal, whereas in a plant, it's beta carotene. Well, very few people, maybe, like 30% of the population can't even convert beta carotene to the retinol form that we need. And then when they do, many people who can, they don't convert all of it. So it doesn't all convert to retinol. You really, the original form that we use comes from animal sourced vitamin A, zinc, selenium, copper, phosphorus. All these things are really in large amounts in animal foods, like oysters, for instance. Amazing. Iron, another one. There's so many nutrients that really are much more besides protein, that are much more bioavailable in an animal form than in a plant form, for the same reasons. We don't have to pull them away from the fiber. We don't have to pull them away. And they're in a form that is more familiar to our bodies, the form that we need. So, the form it doesn't have to be converted. Omega-3s. So that's a big one where people try to get them from chia seeds or flax from ALA. Well, ALA, what we're trying to get is the EPA and DHA, right? That's in the fish for our brain. But only maybe 5 to 10% of ALA can be converted into EPA and DHA. Whereas if you just eat the fish, you're getting 100% of it right there. You don't have to convert it like you would from a chia seed or a flax. So it just doesn't, there's no comparison. Right. We aren't herbivores. There
is difference between supplements and the whole food. It's very much, it's very much easy to understand, but people do believe that supplementation is helpful, important. But the fact is, if you can consume the real whole food to get the ingredients, to get the nutrients, then why to choose that supplement? Where as you said, it's very much the matter comes over here. Also, the bioabsorption from the supplements, if you're consuming, that will not be converted 100%. The efficacy is there. No. It's like you need to understand the efficiency of that supplement and the whole food, that how our body basically reacts to it. It's very much interesting as clarified.
Well, lab created vitamins are just not going to compare to something that's in an animal form that we already need. Right. And if you look at most breads or cereals or processed grain foods, they've added these nutrients to them. Right. They've added the minerals in the time of processing. They aren't originally there. There's very little nutrition in a grain that in wheat, corn, or soy. There's very little we really need, and whatever is in there is in smaller form, a less available form than it would be in an animal source. So, there's really, there's some great vegetables. Vegetables have a lot of minerals, like magnesium, potassium, K, vitamin K is available in a lot of just green, non-starchy vegetables or fermented vegetables, like kimchi and stuff like that. But we don't, so I think those combined with animal form, you're going to get a full spectrum of everything you need. You have some green leafy vegetables, animal-based proteins and fats. You've got everything you need right there. Most of it coming from the animal. Right. There's very little from grains that we really need that and isn't available somewhere else in a better form. Right. So that's why I don't think it's sustainable. I think you're constantly going to be chasing not only protein, but the micronutrients that you need as well. And fat. Our brains need animal fat. Our brain needs cholesterol. right?
Right.
Our every cell in our body comes from the cell membrane is made of animal fat. It's cholesterol and
Cholesterol.
saturated fats, right? And we need at some point our structure is protein and fat. Carbohydrate is not a structure in our body. There's no structure, there's no tissue in our body that's made from glucose,
Right.
but our structures are made from protein and fats. So we need to replace those structures with,
I agree. I
like,
especially means more than 100%
like
agree
structures.
in this particular point with you, Zen. It's very much interesting. Our brain is, there are cell members are made up of fats. We need fats, but people have the intention to avoid fats and avoid cholesterol
Oh yeah.
because we think that it will spike overall cholesterol levels if we eat egg yolks because it has cholesterol. And the matter comes over here, the cholesterol gone, and this conversation will be like will be on run continuously.
It'll be a marathon. Yes,
it will be a
it will go
marathon.
forever.
We
But
all-
again, our liver makes, real quick, our liver makes most of the cholesterol. Every cell in our body creates the cholesterol it needs, but it makes it from our food sources in terms of building blocks from the fat, from the animal-based fat. It's that simple. But yes, the dietary cholesterol has little to no impact on blood cholesterol. That has to do with our liver regulating it. It's very tightly regulated. What we have to give our bodies are the building blocks that it needs to do the normal, functions, right? To replace tissue. The carbohydrates are the last thing we need. We don't really need them. We can live without them because we can create that glucose. They should be at the bottom. They'd be like, if you really are running out of energy, then have some carbohydrates. Otherwise, protein, number one, animal fat.
Yes, animal fat.
Not negotiable. It's not negotiable. It's not negotiable. No, you will be either going to get fatter and sicker chasing protein in your carbohydrates, or you're going to eat really clean, not processed food, but really clean vegetarian, and you're just going to waste away. And I'll admit, when in my 20s, when I was playing with different diets, I was vegetarian for about 3.5 years because I wanted to play with it. I wanted to see. Okay. I wanted to see what I could do.
You were testing. You were basically trying.
I was testing. I was trying different things. I did lots of things. We always test in our 20s, don't we? We experiment. Well, this was an experiment, hopefully for health, But that's what I was looking for. What's the ideal diet? And I stayed skinny, but I couldn't put on muscle. And I'm getting very run down, overtrained because I was working out. I was overtraining very easily. I couldn't put any muscle on. I felt I was tired. I was hungry all the time. Until eventually I added a little bit of eggs and whey protein, and I felt better, and tried a little bit of fish. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've forgotten how much how bad I felt. I didn't realize how bad I felt until I ate this.
That is how the transition happened. You started realizing the importance of the protein sources. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suddenly felt so much better, and I recovered from my workouts, and I realized I'd gone 3 days without having a cup of coffee because I didn't need it, because I felt good. And I realized I had to experience it for myself, but I have experienced it. It wasn't like 3 weeks of being vegetarian. It was 3.5 years. And I was eating black beans and rice, making my own almond. Long before they were making almond milk in the store, I was blending up almonds and putting water in there, making my own almond milk, and trying to eat lots of nuts and beans all the time. That's pretty much all I ate. It was nuts, because that's all I was chasing protein. And it's just not. It was not sustainable for me, especially with my activity level and the kind of health I wanted. So I'm not saying this just from reading books or studies. I have personal experience with it. And so now that is probably my number one food source is animal protein. Honestly, I eat liver and oysters frequently throughout the week, or fish, to get those, an array of micronutrients as well as the protein. So it's not just one, type of protein, but I try to eat a variety.
Got it.
Yeah. So, as well as eggs, there's so much nutrition beyond the protein. It's in those foods that we need for basic functions, and hormone functions. So it's really
for the overall maintenance of our homeostasis. Yes,
exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Zen, for accepting this invitation. Well, I believe.
All right, thank you.
It would be great for the overall informative content.
Yes, I'm looking forward to sharing it as well.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this video till here. And I believe that we will be sharing this video. And if you have really liked this video, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed this channel, please subscribe this channel and share this video and show your support. And do not forget to follow Zane Griggs on Instagram. Always take care of yourself, love yourself, stay fit, stay raw. This is Raj. Time to sign off. Be fit with Raj.